In 1912, the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast was attempting something staggering. They were assembling the massive skeletal hull of what would become the largest moving object in human history. When finished, the RMS Titanic emerged as the crowning engineering achievement of the era, its massive four-funnel silhouette dominating the water. Inside, it offered a level of opulence previously unimaginable at sea. First-class passengers enjoyed lavish dining halls, a swimming pool, and an intricately designed lounge beneath a stained-glass dome. But this obsessive focus on scale and comfort fostered a dangerous illusion. The designers and operators began to believe their engineering had actually conquered the unpredictable forces of the ocean. Below the luxury suites, the demographic reality of the ship was vastly different. The lower decks were crowded with hundreds of third-class passengers, mostly immigrants investing everything they had for a chance at a better life in America. They were sold safety through a bold marketing claim. The ship was practically unsinkable. This confidence came from a below-deck system of advanced watertight compartments designed to keep the vessel afloat even if punctured. So, on April 10th, when the Titanic departed Southampton with over 2,200 souls aboard, this broad cross-section of humanity felt completely secure, unaware they were steaming directly toward disaster. As the vessel entered the deep waters of the North Atlantic, the ship's wireless operators began receiving a steady stream of iceberg warnings from nearby vessels. Yet the crew failed to treat these messages with caution. Internal miscommunication and heavy pressure from the White Star Line to maintain a fast schedule meant the ship kept barreling forward at near top speed. The reality of the ocean caught up with them on the night of April 14th. At 11:40 p.m., lookouts staring into the pitch-black horizon spotted a massive iceberg looming directly in their path. The crew scrambled to reverse the engines and steer away, but the ship's immense momentum was too much. The ice tore along the starboard side, scraping the hull beneath the waterline. By prioritizing a rigid timetable over basic navigation safety, the operators had turned an easily avoidable environmental hazard into a physical collision. To understand exactly why the ship failed, we have to look at the schematic of the Titanic's lower hull. The design relied on isolated watertight compartments that could handle localized flooding, but the iceberg scrape had violently ruptured a long, continuous stretch of the metal. The gash allowed freezing seawater to rapidly flood 6 consecutive compartments. That was exactly one more than the ship was engineered to survive, and as the bow grew heavier, the water simply began spilling over the tops of the bulkheads into the next sections. From the moment that 6th compartment filled, the ship's fate was sealed by pure mathematical certainty. Up on deck, passengers initially dismissed the collision. But as distress flares illuminated the night sky and the deck began to tilt sharply forward, that confusion quickly morphed into widespread panic. The ensuing evacuation exposed a lethal regulatory loophole. Because maritime laws had not kept pace with the massive size of new ocean liners, the Titanic only carried enough lifeboats for about half of the people on board. To make matters worse, the crew was poorly trained for a major emergency. They launched many lifeboats only partially filled, enforcing a rigid women and children first protocol that left hundreds of men stranded on the sloping decks. By 2:20 a.m., the structural stress reached its breaking point, snapping the massive vessel in two. Because of the sheer lack of lifeboat capacity, over 1,500 people were left in the freezing Atlantic waters, quickly succumbing to the cold. Hours after the Titanic slipped beneath the surface, the RMS Carpathia arrived at the coordinates, managing to pull around 700 traumatized survivors from the lifeboats. When the Carpathia reached New York, the terrible reality of the night was immediately laid out for the public to process. The initial shock and mourning in the streets of London and New York quickly turned into intense vocal anger over the sheer preventability of the disaster. Governments were forced to act. Inquiries in both the US and Britain systematically exposed the operational failures, leading to sweeping new laws that required continuous radio monitoring and a mandatory lifeboat seat for every single passenger. The safety regulations that protect modern ocean travelers were written directly in response to the massive casualty list of that single April night. The physical remains of the ship were lost to the deep ocean for over 7 decades, until 1985, when an expedition led by oceanographer Robert Ballard finally located the wreck nearly 2.5 miles below the surface. Today, the rusted, decaying bow of the ship sits in total darkness, preserved strictly as an underwater graveyard. The Titanic rests there as a lasting reminder of our technological limits, proving that no matter the scale of human ambition, it will always be dwarfed by the power of the natural world.